This. Hey everyone, my name is Brian. Well, we got the whole team here, Sam and Ronnie behind the camera. Welcome to Interview, our monthly program here at Da Vinci Art Alliance, where we take the time and space to talk about some of the art that's in the building this month in all sorts of different ways. Since all of us here are artists and thinkers and definitely thrive on feedback and discussion, so that's exactly what we're here to do. So this time around, we are upstairs on the third floor right now, and we're going to be looking at our resident for this month, Nashay, whose work is right here, and then we're going to be looking at some more that's going to be online that Sam will share digitally.
I'm trying to figure out how to get on the TV.
Yeah, take your time.
Yeah.
Following that, we will head downstairs to the second floor to take a look at Printed Copy, which is our big, very cool comic book, illustrative design inspired juried exhibition that we did with Partners and Son. And so that'll take up probably the bulk of our time. And then if there's still time left over, we'll head down to the first floor and check up on Found and Made. I know it's the second time that we've looked at that, but revelations happen, and if we have any new ideas and new voices in the mix, we'll see where they go. So yeah, that's the schedule for today. Good to see you as well. So if you have any comments or questions, feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself. Who cares? We don't have many rules here. And so I think we'll hear from Nashay here in a second. Nashay, why don't you tell us a bit about the body of work that you were thinking about as you were creating what we have in front of us here in the studio, and then maybe some supplementary work that you might be looking at online. So let us know where we need to be thinking about these works, or anything you want to keep us up to speed on that you want to tell us about. We'd love to learn.
Okay, for those of you I haven't met, my name is Nashay Jones. My pronouns are they, them. And I started these paintings because I was trying to get back into painting on physical surfaces after 2 years of only doing digital painting, because I was a graduate student at the University of the Arts studying museum studies. And I didn't really have time to get my paints and things out. It was just easier to grab my iPad because I kept my notes and things for my classes on there anyway. So it was just easier to open a new window, do a sketch, and then go back to studying, or like spend some time drawing and then going back. The four pieces that are there are the ones that I managed to start before when I was able to actually come down to DVAA, closer to the beginning of the month. I'm not able to come down there now because I injured my hip back in April, and apparently I did something to make it worse. So now walking is not a thing I can do well. So I went back to my digital works and have been working on those since the injury, since I can't really like get down there, or like even moving around my house is a little challenging right now. So I like to think that all of my work goes together, because I like to look at the close-up moments of people's lives, the ones that most people would dismiss as mundane, and try to see the beauty in them, and try to expand that narrative in my mind to something that will exist as a painting, because there's a lot of beauty in these moments that most would consider mundane, and you just have to find it.
Very cool. Thank you for that. So how are you determining how you select some of these moments? Because by their nature, we're surrounded by lots of mundane, everyday moments. So is there like a kind of a criteria that you think about, or is it, does inspiration just kind of strike you in a moment?
Usually it's something, a detail in the moment that strikes me as interesting and something that I want to expand upon in a work. Usually it could be anything from a color, a shape, a shadow, something will attract my attention to and I want to expand upon it.
So take us through some of these ones. I guess let's start with the four that are here. Can you tell us a bit more about some of these individual moments and what stood out to you, and then how you've then taken that inspiration and then translated that into a painting and how that's going so far?
Okay, I can do that.
Cool.
I could start on the one that's on the top left, the person with the beard. I actually took a screenshot from a friend of mine's Instagram, and he was just like, it was just a selfie. And for some reason, I just kind of started sketching and expanded upon it just because I like to, I wanted to take a closer look. Like, it's one of those things where I can't paint people if they're sitting in front of me because I get distracted, but take that same image and have a little bit of space that a photograph provides. And usually I can work well with it. And that has just that little bit of space where I'm not doing a portrait gives me a lot of leeway as far as where I can take it. And what I wanted to do with that one is use geometric shapes in the sweatshirt and just play with those as well, because I like just bringing out designs and textile prints and things like that. I'm a knitter and I'm learning how to embroider, and those kinds of things interest me too. Like just the kind of designs that can be on a sweatshirt or on a t-shirt or whatever. It kind of brings in my love of graphic design, which is something I've played around with for years, since high school, really.
Nashay, how are you choosing where you start the like geometric designs? Because I know the other one, it looks like it started in the person's braids.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you choose to start it kind of like right in, like almost in the center like that?
I just kind of played around with it and just kind of sketched and erased and moved things around and just figured out what looked good to me, what felt right, and how I could expand the imagery to make something that seems like a simple image, someone in the process of getting their hair braided, into something more.
So I know these are definitely kind of in process painting so far, and
Yes.
I see that you're starting to develop this kind of geometric kind of fractals that are kind of emerging out of these photographs. And so tell me a bit about where they're heading. So how much would you say? Oh,
I think
sorry,
the bicyclist is the one that I was actively starting to paint when before I really like messed up my hip again. And that was just based on I was taking my own bike out of my basement. I think I was just gonna clean it up, or thinking about taking some photographs to sell it because I don't really ride it that often. And for some reason, just the shadow that was being cast on the ground just caught my attention. And so I snapped the photographs. And the manhole cover was not actually there behind my house, but it was my way of bringing in the geometric shapes that I've been working with, because manhole covers have so many interesting shapes and patterns and things like that. I fell down a bit of a rabbit hole of looking at manhole covers from various places online, like from the Google search. And I just took some of those ideas and put them together because manhole covers are one of those things that I've looked at in the past that I'm not sure why they can be so intricately designed depending on where they are, but they often are. And that's another detail that catches my attention.
Well, it's interesting too with that placement, because I didn't realize that was a manhole cover. I thought it was like the gears for the bike.
Yeah, I kind of put it there to basically because I wasn't sure how I was gonna draw the gears of the bike. And I was trying to figure out what I was gonna do with that area because it just seemed empty. So I'm a Philly native. I've walked and past a lot of manhole covers, and really some of them are more interesting to look at than others. So that it kind of I just went from there.
But I think it's interesting, Nashay, like thinking about your critique, what was that, in 2020? Or was that early 2021? That was 21.
A while ago.
Yeah, your critique from like a year and a half ago.
Mhm.
I feel like your work is like becoming more abstracted from what we saw like a year and a half ago. And it's really interesting that it's like you're starting to break down forms in a different way.
Yeah, it's like they're objects, but I want people to look past the everyday object into what it can become. It's just I spend a lot of time by myself, and I spend a lot of time in my own head, like doing sketches and thinking thoughts and just letting what catches my attention, just letting things, catch my attention and letting them be what they become. So that's basically what I've come up with so far. And it's also things that are reflected in my digital images as well.
But I wonder, even like the painting that you have, the segment earlier with braids, like I wonder if you like zoomed in closer. Like if that would be like, Ryan, do you wanna get closer to that? Thank you. My camera lady.
They're all quite small, and that was something I was challenging myself to do after a talk with Kathleen Boussolet, one of the other resident artists, and she was telling me how like the smaller images are often the more marketable, they're easier to sell because they're often less expensive, and an artist can do more of them in the same amount of time that they would be able to make a larger image. So I challenged myself to work on nothing bigger than 9x12. And I think that's 8x10 if I'm not sure.
Yeah. So what I was saying was like, what if you zoom in more on the image itself? So like thinking of the abstraction, what if you just had like this section, So like it was like people had to work harder to like recognize what was happening. And like elevating that process of like getting your hair braided even more. So like it's not someone imagining themselves in it, or like in the same way as like, or wait, it is someone imagining themselves in it because they aren't seeing the rest of the figure.
Mm-hmm. I feel like seeing the entire figure kind of gives it a context, because I don't want to completely detextualize the things that I'm working on, but I just want to expand upon the pre-existing context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something about this one where it's like, it feels a lot more contained than the other ones, that like the other ones travel off of the canvas.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, it feels like even the geometric shapes are like being pushed in, except for the one that leads out. And I think that's where like, I'm like wanting that zoom in a little bit more, or it just like expanding out so it doesn't have those like hard lines.
Okay, that was actually one that I began maybe in I think I began that one in May, and that was actually the first one of those images. So I think I kind of got the hang of what I was doing in that first one and am expanding upon it in the others. The one with the table and the coffee cup is actually the last one. And that's when I was still composing. I was having a discussion with Mary Henderson about where I'm going with that one. And I was thinking about adding a stove in the upper corner and a hot comb, because I wanted to talk about I wanted that to be about my memories of getting my hair straightened when I was younger in the kitchen. But I wanted that coffee cup to be the anchoring bit, because that's kind of what that's basically a lot of Saturday mornings of my childhood in a nutshell. So I wanted to revisit those memories now that those are several decades, about a decade or two in the past.
Yeah, it's funny too, because I feel like we had a critique with Isabel right before I left for vacation. And Isabel also was working on a painting with stuff on a table and people arranged around it. That was a similar perspective of it's kind of floating in space, and it's I really enjoy this perspective of it's a little away from reality. That it feels like that fogginess of memory of you're attached to the coffee cup and the oven in the background, and more so than the grounding of the coffee table on the ground,
And I think that's that perspective is basically me separated by time from actually sitting in the kitchen getting my hair straightened. It's not my current reality, but it's a past reality that I want to pay tribute to, because it's part of the culture from which it's part of the culture that I come from. So it's important to me, but it's memory. So it kind of that's basically another way to distance myself from it. The signified distance.
So was that image, were you creating that image from a photograph, or is this entirely constructed from memory?
It is partially from a photograph, partially from memory. A lot of my images are a little of both.
I have a question. Hi, first of all, it's Linda. Nice to see you. I thought you were going to be here. I'm not a painter, so I'm just curious. You always do a pencil sketch, and then the yellow one, you put one color on first, and then later go.
Yes, I was. I started layering. I don't usually layer colors that way, but I was trying something new as a suggestion from Mary, who is the residency director. I basically asked her to show me how she paints, because I really love how photorealistic her paintings are, and I love the way she uses color. So from her suggestions, I was trying to use a similar technique, and she told me she applies colors in layers, usually starting with the yellows and then moving on to greens and blues and reds and things like that. So I wanted to try to see how that process will work for me, because it was just something very different from it's something very different from what I'm used to.
So my other question is, do you stick to that? You start out with the pencil sketch, but as you're painting, do you sometimes change it and just?
Oh, I go back and sketch with. I go back and change my pencil sketches all the time when I paint, all the time. And usually I let the acrylics dry, go back, sketch with pencil, and I'll come back the next day. I will do some more painting with some more pencil sketch until the image works for me as a cohesive whole.
Great. Interesting.
What medium are you using, Nashay?
I'm using the fluid acrylics and the heavy body acrylics. The fluid acrylics was actually another suggestion from Mary, and they were in the venture to try to acquire because I ordered them on Blick's website, and the package got lost, and then it was redelivered, and I actually started to use those paints. So that was a bit unexpected, and kind of I think it makes for a good story to tell now that it's all resolved.
Very optimistic way of looking at it, so I appreciate that.
Not so great when you're in the midst of it, but it's something to talk about afterwards.
Exactly. It was very frustrating because they said they delivered it to Fleischer, and Fleischer didn't have it, and it was a mess. I complained on Twitter, and FedEx's social media manager got in touch with me, and it was a mess.
Yeah.
Nashay also has a really strong digital practice. So we wanted to feature some of their other work that they're working on. If I can get my mouse to appear, here it is. I'm still getting used to using a television as our computer. Here.
A lot of these images are works in progress, and I'm still working on them. This is an image, you all may recognize Kara, the fellowship coordinator, Kara Machinda. This is actually an image based on an image she posted on her Instagram of her and her daughter. And I asked for permission to use it quite a while ago, and this is what I came up with. For a long time, I was trying to decide if I was going to do more with it, or am I going to consider this done and move on? And honestly, I'm still thinking about it. Honestly, I think this might be done though, because this was a really fun image because it's definitely one of those micro moments of interaction between Kara and her child, and them playing together. It's just always fun to see parents and kids playing and having fun together.
Yeah, I love all of these like layering details you did with the bubbles, Nashay. I think, and like these moments, I think they're really cool.
I really love it. Which do you like better? Or do you like them both, the painting or the computer?
It's good. That's a good question because I started off as a traditional painter. I studied painting at Cheney University, and I primarily did oils and watercolors. And when I graduated in 2006, I didn't really have any space to do it, like to continue to work with oils, because I was just painting in my home space. And so I moved to acrylics, and I like acrylics because of they're so versatile, and you could do anything from like graphic appearing paintings to something a little more transparent, a little more layered, a little closer to watercolor. And I moved to digital after that because I've been curious about digital painting. Like I would see images that people made on Instagram, and I'm just like, I wonder how they did that. And I got an iPad. Once Apple Pencil came out, I got an iPad and I decided to give it a try. And like I said, I like the fact that I don't have to worry about cleaning up and putting things away. I could just move on to whatever the next activity is. And, it's a way to paint when I don't really have the space or means to paint. And I love the fact that it's portable. So I can just put it in my backpack and take it with me.
Do you use the same colors and like the same color sense in both the paintings and in the digital?
Yes, I do should use the same colors. I just try to, I tend to pull for digital pieces, I tend to pull my colors from stock photographs and different things like that. And just so I can use different colors. But I tend to, if I'm not paying attention, I tend to use the same colors everywhere. Like some of these are just various like sketches and things like that. Like some of them are even more cleaned up than others. This was one of my high school friends posted an image on his Facebook, and I just kind of went with it and drew other things. And it pulls in my love of body modifications and piercings. Like I drew in the septum piercing and the labret piercing, because if I don't, as much as I say I don't want a bunch, like I'm pretty sure that I'm not gonna get any more piercings in my face, but I like the aesthetic value in them, and I like to see them on other people, even though I feel like I have enough on my face personally, but I do like the way they look.
Yeah, it's interesting too how they it does correspond to your like physical practice of like painting. Because you still start with like the underlying sketch and move into it, you know?
Yeah, I feel like having a strong sketch is important, and I'm always is usually why I spend so much longer on my digital paintings, because I really want a strong underlying sketch to work from. This is actually a relatively recent sketch that I did when I was listening. I was on a Zoom program from the Center for Art in Wood, and they were talking about, the artist that was talking, her name is Kate Hawes. Their name is Kate Hawes, and they were talking about a project that they did about wooden spoon carving. And as I'm listening, I'm sketching, and this is the sketch that I came up with. I haven't really done a lot with it since the presentation, which was a couple weeks ago. But I see how it's fitting into my general work, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to continue working on it.
Well, then also, Nashay, is there anything I know that your residency, there's been a lot of surprises.
Yeah.
So for everyone here to know, Nashay has been going through like some personal life stuff and haven't been able to come here as often. So we're extending their residency for December 1st to 15th to make up for some of the time lost. So knowing that we still have a couple of weeks, and then you're gonna have like basically like a follow-up 2 weeks in December, is there anything that you want like some feedback on or advice on moving towards like the later half of your residency?
I'm interested in the feedback on ways that you see that you all might imagine these sketches going, as far as color, as far as things that I hadn't even thought of yet, because right now they're just really messy sketches, and I've cleaned up some of my lines so that they look okay, but I tend to not. Yeah, I didn't want you all to see my very messy beginner sketches. These are sketches that have gotten cleaned up a little bit. just because I really wanted to get my point. I really wanted to make sure I was getting my point across. If you could go back to the sketches on SEPTA.
I love those, by the way.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
there's so much
actually,
intimacy in
this
them.
one, yeah, this one is actually a reworking of a piece I did in 2018. And I'm trying to decide, since I did do the original piece in 2018, how am I going to rework it to make it, like, going back and reworking my own work is not something I usually do. But for this image, I just wanted a chance to try again. It's something that I don't know what the rules are for that, but it's basically
There are no rules. It's art. We have no rules.
I mean, it's one of my images. You can find the original working of it, the original digital painting I did was on Instagram. It's on my Instagram, but I don't have the completed file. And I just found the sketch file on my computer's hard drive, and I was like, maybe I can do something with this again, because I'm still a fan of taking images of people on SEPTA and working with them. As you can see from the other on SEPTA image is more recent. Yeah, this person appealed to me because they had like bright pink hair, and I'm definitely going to incorporate that into the sketch. And I remember I was on the 125 bus, I believe, going to King of Prussia, and this person just had like really bright red hair, and they were wearing like black sweats and a denim jacket, and like it just seemed like such a juxtaposition, because their hair just caught my attention, and I took a photograph, and this is the sketch that came from it. I kind of like doing these sketches because it's always a marvel to me what exactly attracts my eye when when I'm doing something as mundane as commuting. Like, what sticks, what makes me want to come back to these images? Why do I take the initial photographs? It's like a sort of a notepad, because it's like, okay, I can make a note of this, come back to this. But then it's like, okay, why am I coming back to it? So that's the kind of internal dialogue that happens when I take these kind of images. It's one of those things where for some reason I'm drawn back to it, but I continuously think about why, even months after the fact, because I'm pretty sure I took this in like April or something. But it's always fun to figure out why I'm revisiting an image.
Well, I think it's cool too, Nashay, because it's like thinking about like your artist statement that you're working on a couple months ago, and like the idea of like history within your work, of like documenting people's histories and like expanding on them. Mm-hmm. I think this series is like kind of like a documentation of like the I can't pronounce that word, mundaneness of our histories, like the parts that aren't documented, but are these like day-to-day experiences that some people experience and some people don't. I think that, and like the specialness of the people that you see in these spaces, I think that's really cool.
I think the series on the SEPTA is a fabulous thing, and I would like them bigger than the 8x10 now. I think that would give them.
I think this is a poster size.
Yeah, that sounds more like it.
I can't wait to finish these and get prints of them to add to the flat file that's going to be that's going to be down in the gallery space at DVA.
Yeah, I think people would love these.
I would send them and take pictures of them and send them to SEPTA. I mean, I think that one with the mother and the child is such an intimate, beautiful, it's just wonderful.
I'm gonna say some of the comments in the chat, which you guys can talk out loud too if you want. But Ross said a commuter series would be so cool. And Liv says, going back to what Sam said earlier, I think it might be interesting to hyperfixate or zoom in on the specific part that drew your interest in the first place and contrast it in some way to the context around it.
Oh, that could be interesting.
I was gonna say too, Nashay, like doing a digital version of it and then a painting where you zoom in really close to, like Liv says, what initially drew you to the person. And you can do something side by side where you do like an overview digital painting and then like a close up physical painting. That could be kind of cool. And then you can keep the painting small still.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like it's mainly what drew me to this image was the fact that this person had like bright pink hair and bright pink fingernails and long eyelashes. And for me, that's something that's different because I'm not a long nails and long fingernail, like long nails and pink hair kind of person. But I do like the aesthetic of it, even though it's not a look that I would get myself. Like, I don't want pink hair, but it looks cool on this person.
I'm sure part of the reason why she had it was to have people look at it.
Yeah.
Care if you don't want people to look at it.
There's something really just raw and wonderful about the line work that I am not feeling that needs any sort of cleanliness. I would lean into what's happening here and push it further, see how far it can go, because even without knowing that there's, pink hair here and what the colors of SEPTA, paint the insides of their subways and buses, I was really starting to kind of feel them anyway. And I think that can come through just in really well-developed line work. That doesn't need to be clean, it can be messy, but confident is often more important than cleanliness. And I can see that you have the ability to go there. And so I want to encourage you or give permission to have a work develop in that way.
Yeah, I'm curious, like the combo of, because I also love this, the combo of taking the line work of something like this and then going into something like this that's so like hard edge. Like where is like the middle between those two,
Okay. This is another thing I was talking to Mary about because this image is of my friend Jason, and I did it in Adobe Illustrator. And for those of you who are familiar with Adobe Illustrator, it's very like everything is made with closed shapes. Like there is no like hatching or cross hatching. Everything has to be a fully closed shape, and basically images are made by layering shapes on top of each other. So it has this very specific look to it. And I've seen a lot of different things done with Illustrator, but I'm not the most skilled with Illustrator. I just it's one of those things that I just bounce to every so often because I like the look of it. And I would like to develop a particular style of the way I work in it, but it's a piece of software that one has to work in a very specific way in order to make images.
Yeah, what is the program you normally use? The ones?
I use Adobe Fresco and also Procreate for the iPad.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if you use Procreate because I feel like people have been I don't know how to use it, but I feel like people have been doing really, really cool stuff with it. And I wish that I had that skill set.
Yeah, I kind of go back and forth between Fresco and Procreate because I like Procreate, but then I use Fresco because Procreate only saves your images on your device, and I've lost images. I've lost quite a few images by them not also being saved in the cloud. So I kind of go back and forth between Fresco and Procreate for that reason. And I'm paying for the way Adobe works is you pay your monthly subscription fee and you have access to all the software. So why not use as much of it as possible since I have to pay for all of it?
Yeah, I'm also wondering, Nisha, because your line work on here is finished, you know? So I'm wondering, what if you took the line work you already have, right? Just like the baseline, printed it out, you use transfer paper on a canvas, and then you use paint over those. So you don't have to like manually.
Cool. I never really thought about transferring them to canvas and working on them there. Usually I like work on things digitally and then I work on things on things on canvas, and they're kind of separate and distinct. I did just recently download an app where you can use a phone as a projector of images that exists on a phone or an iPad, for instance, and you could project them onto a canvas or other surface so that you can paint them. And I'm going to be experimenting with that in the coming months because I just got a phone tripod to use with it.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool because I think like some of the stuff that you're like, I don't want to say you're struggling with because I don't know if you're struggling with them, but like from looking at the canvases, it seems like you went back in a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And like it seems like you work quicker on the iPad to get your line drawings done. So maybe you can get like the sketches done digitally, and then you can just get it onto the canvas and be able to just like go right into it with paint and be able to be like a little more loose with it.
That's something I'm definitely going to look into with the phone tripod that I have and the app that I downloaded and things like that. That's why I bought the phone tripod. So I only got it maybe a week or two ago, right before I messed up my hip again. So that's gonna be a while before I get a chance to use that because honestly, all my canvases and surfaces are there at DVAA. So when I get someone to bring them back to me, I would definitely work on that because you know what, these can definitely exist in multiple spaces, in both digital and physical spaces. And it's like some people just use their iPads as a sketchbook, and I never thought of that, but that's basically what you're suggesting, is using the iPad as a sketchbook and to finalize my sketches and then bring them into onto a canvas.
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool.
Because it is true, I do sketch faster digitally because it's like it's easy to wait. Like if I wake up at a crazy hour in the morning, it's just easy to grab the iPad and do some sketching, then go back to sleep, rather than set up paints. I don't want to set up paints if I'm just if I'm up at 4 a.m. and can't sleep.
Yeah. Okay, so we're nearing time. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we go to the second floor?
I just wanted to, I appreciate all of your feedback, and I can't wait to show you these images as they develop. I guess you can kind of see where the ways I use color in the images that have color to them, like the image that's called Hood. That's pretty much, I was thinking about doing some changes to that color to make it less like the colors based on reality and just get a little more fantasy with the color, like fantastical with the colors. but I'm still thinking about that. And I am thinking about also layering in video with that image specifically and seeing where that goes. I have a bunch of ideas, but I'm not sure. I'm still trying to figure out how to execute them, basically.
Well, we can help.
Thank you everyone for all of your feedback and all of your ideas, because it's kind of like the way I create my art when I'm just by myself is kind of isolating, and I really miss the academic environment in which I got feedback and have been trying to find ways to get feedback ever since I have not been in that type of environment. So this is valuable to me. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to emphasize what was said before, which is that you are the boss of that paper. Whenever the artist is in charge and whatever you put on it is right. So you don't have to worry about being wrong or, worrying what somebody else says because it's yours.
It's just,
Yeah.
I just had such a problem with seeing things and I'm like, I should try that. And that's where all of this has come from, seeing things online and artists who post YouTube videos and things like that. And it's like, how do you do that? And how can I try it?
Right.
I missed it, Olivia. Liz says, thanks for sharing, Nashay. And
No problem.
says, love your willingness and ability to try new things and how you're giving your work so much thoughtful consideration.
Yes, it's a part of the fun of being an artist is trying new things, and isn't it, with any material you work in?
All right, well, thank you so much, Nashay. I think we should head downstairs, so give us a minute for the folks online as we move the
Brief
show around.
intermission of me turning my camera off. So again, as last month, you don't see my belly the whole time walking downstairs. One section. Oh. Hold on, my screen isn't on at all.
Do you need anything, Terry?
I think
think we are all set up.
All right. And everything's enacted in all the same ways, we're all good? Can y'all hear us okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, I know.
Oh,
The sound that I adjusted.
oh, yeah, change your speaker to.
Now we can hear you. I hope.
Somebody sound check us.
We can hear you.
Okay, great, yeah, okay, now we can hear you,
Now we can
sorry,
hear you.
we couldn't hear you for a minute. All right, now we're all set up. So, all right, we are down in gallery 2 now, inside Printed Copy, which is this month's exhibition in gallery 2, which is a juried exhibition featuring all sorts of work that's coming from the kind of more comic leaning community. So there's lots of illustration, there's design, there's lots of work on paper and printmaking, all sorts of materials.
There's a blanket.
There's a blanket. So a lot of it is illustrative, a lot of it is kind of close to much of the small independent press kind of community that is around Philadelphia. And appropriately so, we got Tom and Gina of Partners in Sun, which is a comic book / art gallery that is over like 3 blocks away over on 6th Street from us here in Da Vinci, which are good friends of ours, to jury the show for us. So we have roughly like 25 artists here in the show that all have either 1 or 2 pieces in here, as well as many other variations of prints and zines and comic books and all sorts of other kind of ephemera that's also for sale, which was kind of a fun, different experience as opposed to our kind of normal sales model. But so we had this event as well as a small distribution event in Palumbo Park about a week
A week
ago.
ago.
Um,
The small press fair.
The small press fair that
Also opened us up to a different group of, so this was a national call of artists all over the country. But then the small press fair, we worked with Pat Eluzio.
yes.
Thank you. Who runs Yedu Comics. He also teaches at Fleischer. He's been running the small press fair in different venues for over 10 years now. I think we are the 10th year or 10th iteration of it. And he brought out like 10 of his friends who are also well-known comic artists or like graphic artists in the Philly area. And a lot of their friends came out. It was super fun.
Yeah. And so every year we try to fit in, usually at least one juried exhibition into our very busy schedule here in the gallery. And so this, I believe, is the only juried show that we have.
We had the craft show in January.
Oh,
We
right.
just ran the open call last year, so it didn't feel like.
1,000 years ago. Yeah, so one of 2 juried exhibitions that we have on our year of programming here. So we do that because a lot of folks in the community, especially around the exhibitions committee, are interested in juried exhibitions. It's a different form of show that we do here that reaches different audiences, which is great for growing folks who come through our doors at Da Vinci, as well as connecting to new mediums that might not necessarily have a gallery to support them. This kind of community especially has fewer resources in the kind of like fine art with a capital F and A in Philadelphia. So we thought it'd be great to shine a spotlight in that direction for a bit, as well as everyone in the community that I've interacted with is wonderfully pleasant to work with, and I had a lot of fun. So I want to kind of talk about what this exhibition is doing, how it was received, how it looks, and how it has served Da Vinci, and maybe how it served the print and graphic arts community, all of it. Yeah, or questions, comments, ideas. all open for debate since we don't have any of the, 25 artists that are in the show here. It's more about kind of looking at this from a more macro perspective.
I think that's a good point too. It helps us, like any feedback about the jury shows, because that helps inform us for what a future jury show could be. So I think for this year with the craft show, and then for this show, we were focusing on two groups that sometimes they were left out of the fine arts community. So specifically for the craft show, we did a hard and soft show that elevated ceramic and fiber works. And then for this show, obviously it's like graphic artists and illustrators that are a lot of times left out of like white wall institutions. So that was important to us when we chose the jury shows this year, but we are open to ideas for future ones.
Yeah, if there's anything that we want to look at more specifically, we can take a closer eye on it with our camera over here, or just any thoughts and ideas about the exhibition, or questions about how open calls and jury exhibitions run here. We're happy to talk about, or if it seems worth investing in doing these kinds of programs for our exhibitions schedule for the year, or if it's, in your opinion, better suited in other ways of our creative space. I would really love to appreciate the feedback. Yeah.
Look, how do you think about, if you get all this artwork, how do you think about how to curate that and what makes you use this piece next to that and
A complicated question, yeah, so.
well, was there like a theme, like this is about this thing? And then it's going to, each of these pieces, or like the Hopies, when people just say one thing, and then it creates like an answer.
I mean, I think that might be happening on its own, but I didn't intentionally kind of group things in terms of their depicted content. If all the figurative work is over here, all of the other work is over here, or by medium, for instance, or by kind of color palettes. Instead, some of the concerns that I was thinking about specifically about this show is that because there's so much kind of detail work happening in all of this work, is that it's really important to make sure that we can see that. So oftentimes it needs to be near eye level, which is a challenge for a very populated exhibition here, but one that also requires a very, very close perspective on it, since there's so much detail, there's a lot of text, a lot of that text is small. And so needing to kind of figure out a system that benefits both of those factors here. And so we have a very kind of tight hang, all kind of in a linear band around the room. But in doing so, you need to find a way to kind of balance that out. So things kind of feel similar. So you notice we have two of the largest things facing apart from each other here, which are kind of anchored to the wall here. Smaller pieces kind of fit together in a way like a puzzle. It all kind of comes together, being very kind of keen on what sort of rhythms are happening, what sort of visual rhythms, where you don't have one area of a wall that kind of visually feels heavier than the other one. So they all kind of have a kind of a neutral tone that allows you to kind of move throughout the room a little bit easier. Or nothing immediately stands out more so than anything else to a significant degree. So those are just kind of things that I'm thinking about, laying out a kind of a complicated show like this.
yeah, it seems unified, each wall.
Yeah, since everyone has just like one or two pieces, it kind of would be hard to emphasize one thing over another. So it feels a little bit more kind of appropriate to have the whole thing a little bit more visually balanced.
Yeah, I think part of it too is that like Gina and Tom, even though all the work is like completely disparate, that like somehow like it was even like we got a lot of entries for this show and it was like all over the place. And somehow they like tied it all together, even though there are all these like different things, that it feels balanced, you know?
Yeah,
But I think would have been maybe more difficult with a different curator.
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, because it's like, I don't necessarily know, I would have picked like these two pieces to be curated into the same show, you know, but they make sense in the same show because of everything else in the work.
I think that that's what's strong about the show is that there like almost wasn't as many rules, kind of, like there is this like not low, like it's kind of high and low, you know what I mean? Where it is kind of just these small drawings that are like beautiful, obviously, but it wouldn't normally go with something that's so intricate and large and like extensive as this, but it's like, that's kind of what makes it so cool. It's like, you don't see that all the time. So I like that about the show.
Yeah, Roz wanted to add on to what we're talking about the painting too. I see color threads along with the black and white threads as connecting the work and moving the eye along.
Yeah, I would intentionally kind of spreading out where significant pops of color are, as opposed to a lot of black and white work isn't here, because could have easily, you know, randomized everything and suddenly this entire wall is pink and bright, and whereas this whole other wall could be just not black and white, but that's not something that would balance out the exhibition in the same way. So kind of intentionally making this a little bit more kind of homogeneous.
Robert, I'm curious what you're thinking about.
Well, I can't really, the only thing I'm thinking about is that what ties them together is that they're mostly on paper.
Yeah.
So, I mean, otherwise, there's comics, and then there's these more, they're not that, like that one over there is not a comic.
Yeah.
And this one is more of an illustration, but it's also not a comic. I mean, it's funny. I think it's sort of interesting that those are the two souls. But because the comics are very busy, and you have to spend a lot of time with them. And in a show where you're coming in, something like that is faster and more impactful to look at. Whereas if I had to go there, I would have to stay a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to an art crumb show at I think it was David Brunner, and this huge gallery was filled up with art crumb. And you know, after a while, I just have to leave because it was too much. I would have to. So you have to spend a lot of time. So that's why I haven't been in before. So I don't really have much to say except that they're on paper. There's a couple of different kinds of things, and most of them are wonderful. Yeah, well, I had spent like hours. So I have anything to say.
I really liked, adding on to what you're saying, Robert, one of the things that I think is interesting too, with it kind of like, you have to take time with it and really be able to appreciate it, is like there's some pieces that we have here that we have like prints of that are less complicated, and like it made me understand what was actually on the wall. So like, I think these two are the easiest examples, like the capstones on this wall. I like just looking at it, didn't really like pay attention. I was like, oh, it's like blobby things. And didn't really like recognize the image underneath, but then we have like the like risograph versions of them. And I was like, oh, this is what the image is. So like this is the one all the way over there. And then it's on the other side of the thing. This is the one that's over there. Wow. And like, it gave me like a better appreciation. I have to actually.
Here, you want to show the camera too?
Yeah, it gave me like a better appreciation of like the work. Which I don't know a lot of artists that work in that way, where they like have multiple iterations of the same thing, except for like printmakers. And like graphic artists, which is another like thing I didn't really think about until the show.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate that we got a lot of kind of like raw original panels that ultimately turned into things that went inside like a graphic novel. It's interesting to kind of see what the similarities and differences, and you can see a little bit more of that process and becomes less of a mystery. And so a lot of the works that are here, we also have the, I guess it would be kind of a different sort of final product of the actual comic book that they are ultimately reproduced in.
It's a different process to look at comic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very slow, I'm just realizing it now because like, when I think about the direction of what I'm doing, I'm trying to get more on a single image, because back in the day, when I said, well, there's a lot going on, and what they really meant was, phew, this is not the process of taking in something in one way, but on the other hand, if you're sitting down and you're looking and or if you're making it with this really intense, very slow, it's a whole different way of thinking. It's a different art form entirely. It's probably as different as sculpture is, coming in quickly, it's hard. I keep coming back and looking at my eye with the simple ones. These two, that one. And it's kind of teaching me a little bit something about what's strong, what pulls you in immediately, which is a different kind of thing than if you're, at a table and you have plenty of time, or, I mean, when we used to look at the art crumb comics back in the day, we had a certain influence on us that made us sit and concentrate. But I won't say what exact influence, but back in the day, there was, you would sit, oh, look at this rock, it's beautiful.
I'm like thinking about how like multi-panel images end up functioning in a white wall space that I'm more familiar with, and how kind of that narrative unfolds at a glance and how it unfolds over time, and thinking that and connecting that very immediate process of what's in front of us to our history that I grew up with. What do triptych altar pieces do with their multi-panel images? And how does narrative relate to those two very different things in a similar way? Or what are the purposes of triptychs and diptychs, and how can they inform how I communicate a narrative with image?
I noticed too, like, just based on the last few months, this show has been the one where when people come into the gallery, they spend like so much more time with it than any other show we've had. And I think it just like, it's really cool how that storytelling element really has come through.
I would love, this is something that I couldn't even see everything in one sitting. So having a book, and then you could just savor, really get, like, and then you would find the storyline of this, like you might see the same characters coming together, that just a conversation.
Yeah, it would be cool to see like a comic or illustration solo exhibit if someone has just like a ton of work, and then you can see all like the characters where they like resurface, and that's like a good idea, I think.
I do that with collage, and when I put them together, I think, oh, this is her like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's what happened here.
I know like there are kind of maybe not so comic artists that definitely have like a kind of like character system
Yeah.
where things, emerge in a similar way. I think of like, I went to like a Murakami show in Chicago many years ago, and he has kind of a certain slate of characters that reappear, and it's really wonderful because the whole show is set up over time of his career. And so you get to see how he was thinking about these characters and how this character just disappeared for a while, but it kind of influences other one, but he ended up bringing it back, but it changed in an interesting way. And that kind of related to what was happening in the world and pop and, Japanese culture, yeah, various Kanye West collaborations.
Yeah, I loved the show. It was fun to like meeting all the artists too, and like having so many different artists in one exhibit was really interesting, I thought, in such a small space too.
Well, I think it was a different dynamic also, that like, a lot of the juried shows we've had in the past, the opening, none of them come to it, because
Yeah.
they just kind of were like, well, there's a piece in this show. But I don't know what it is with this show, maybe because like, they're not seen in galleries as often, so this is like an experience for them that was different, like, the opening was packed.
Yeah.
Which that was exciting. I mean, I wasn't there, I was on vacation, but,
It
like
was
seeing the
packed. I can
photos.
vouch.
Yeah, like I was like following along on vacation, because like everyone was Instagramming it. But like people I know who like I've never seen here were here that night. So it brought in like a lot of different people, which was really cool.
I think too, it was an international or a national open call, but probably it has a lot to do with just like our audience bases in Philadelphia, but most of the artists were Philadelphia based, and it kind of reflects like the Philly art scene too right now in a way, which I think is cool. And like maybe that's why a lot of people came too. Like a lot of people here are just making this type of art, and it's like an exciting time to have like illustration style art.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, I think we definitely have new people kind of paying attention to what Da Vinci Art Alliance is doing that otherwise maybe wouldn't have, which I find certainly appealing, and especially if I can help a subsection of Philly art express itself in a way that it's not normally able to, and connect an audience that might not be used to seeing this kind of work to the separate audience that isn't used to being able to show this kind of work in this place. And I think in terms of like, the mission of the org that we run, that's incredibly valuable of an opportunity.
I want to read some of the chat. So Roz says that show blurs the distinction between illustration and art. Does that distinction exist anymore?
I mean, it's interesting because this is a show of like exclusively illustration, and maybe it would make more sense to have a show that incorporates this maybe more organically with other forms of work.
Well, I think we kind of accomplish both, because there's printmakers in here that do show their work in an institute. Like, I think Mark is a good example. Mark runs his own gallery up in Kensington. And like Nasir has work in Gross Motif right now, and also is one of our residents. But like there is like art that kind of like made it like fine artists, like traditional artists that went through like these institutions that are in this space. But then there are people who are not traditionally trained that have come through illustrators that are in the show,
Yeah.
Yeah, for like Roz's question too, I feel like as time moves on, the line of illustration versus like fine art is blurring kind of. Like there definitely are just like people who are consider themselves just illustrators and people who are like, no, do fine art. But like Nasir's, that's like a great example, Sam, because he's using oil and pen on paper. Like, I think that's like a cool combination. I mean, I'm sure people have done that forever, but yeah, I'd like to know if he considers himself like an illustrator or just a painter or like kind of just an overarching artist. I don't know, it would be interesting to hear.
Well, that's interesting, because like this year I view as like a documentary
Yeah.
painter.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. Totally.
I actually don't think it's all illustrative work here at all. I think what was sort of clear to me is what was most of it is, because it's graphic novel type stuff. But the stuff that isn't jumps out at you. And so I wouldn't look at that as an illustrative, as illustration. I would look at it as I look at any other, piece of art. Same with a few others. And it's so interesting to see that, but to me, the line, there isn't. I mean, to talk to what Roz asked, for me, there's always been that strong line between the two, actually. And I don't, it's kind of like when people ask, well, where is craft and it's a little more blurry, but I think there is. And I think this show kind of demonstrates it in places, if you will. And I think next year is one.
Yeah, it just kind of allows for more middle ground to be occupied. Not to say that you can't have a strictly illustrative practice and be an illustrator and never talk about art in your entire life. Like, you can still do that, obviously, and we have some of that work here, but there's just a lot of things that are happening in grayer areas that are exciting as well.
And I think if you're interested in the show, definitely check out Partners and Sons, because this is a really good representation of all of what's happening there. So they feature artists every month. Tom and Gina lived in Brooklyn for like 20 years, so they bring in artists that they knew in New York. They like put in artists that they've met since moving to Philly. Small plug for my partner. He has a show there in the fall, and he's a woodworker, but he's inspired by graphic novels in his work, so it makes sense. And I think that's where they're exploring too, is the blurred lines. Like, they build their sculpture people that just really appreciate graphic art and opened up the shop. And that's like Ellie Tomlinson, who works at Lakeshore across the street, who's also a sculpture artist. She had a show there probably around this time last year, and it was all of her sculpture work, and it was incredible. So yeah, I really like that they have those blurred lines that are really distinctive with it, of like bringing in these artists that are inspired by the work in some way, and then having them directly next to like illustrations and comic books and graphic novels.
I didn't know that they were sculpture artists. That's so cool. Was in Brooklyn, did they have a shop that was like a comic store too? Or
I have no idea what they did before. I never asked. We talked a lot about like their studio practice.
Yeah.
I never knew what they did for work.
It's cool.
Was it Tom and Gina?
Yeah, they
or
both
just
were
Tom?
part of Transmitter Design, which is in a bunch of, it's in a place where TSA had their space there, and Onderdonk and Microscope, so one building. And
I forgot they were also one of the cool kids. Cool New Yorkers.
I just know how to build shit.
And that space is a collective, right?
They're all collectives there.
Yeah, I'm so used to you living here now. I forgot you were living. Thank you, really good. Okay, I think we probably should move downstairs. We have Carol in attendance today. She's downstairs.
Oh.
So we can get a brief
Yeah.
little Q&A with her. Because we did discuss Carol and Howard's work last month, but Carol was planning to visit today, so we asked her to stop in. And be able to like in person point at things and talk about them and answer questions. Oh, and before I forget to say what Roz and Liz said in the chat, Roz said bringing in the illustration community is a terrific result. And Liz says, I feel like we should try to include this type of art more often in our exhibitions. I agree with both of you.
Feedback noted. All right,
So we have one more.
yeah, stay
journey
tuned.
downstairs.
We gotta do this process again. We'll unplug everybody and plug you back in just a few minutes.
This will be easier. I'll just bring the laptop. We don't need the monitor.
Oh, no, matter.
Talk to you later. Bye. Take care. Oh, no, I didn't even, well, I did.
You did great. Wonderful. Okay, so Carol is in attendance with us, for people at home. Also, can you hear us okay?
You might have to switch the.
No, it says Yeti. Yep.
Oh, the
Liz says yeah.
is Yeti though, I think.
Oh, okay.
It always wants to like align them in the same, but you have to switch. them
Okay.
manually.
Cool. I think we are ready to go.
If I had understood, I
Alright.
would have gotten Howard to stay.
Yeah, so do you want to talk a
Okay,
little bit
sure.
about like your process? We have a couple of overlap people from last time, so
Okay, sure.
there, like Robert already knows the context of your work. If you want to like be like go over, do an overview of the show and like how you guys kind of like developed it
Oh,
or like decided to have the show
okay.
and like how it's changed since COVID.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's gotten, yeah, since COVID, this show, well, Howard actually had started, I'm gonna talk about Howard Brunner's work as well, if I can.
Yeah.
And we didn't sense that the show was gonna go together, and actually, I'd never seen his work for the show before we got here. And we didn't know that we had such a relationship building, and it really shocked us. And no thought about it. It must, we live together, so I don't know, somehow we transmit. They say you do that as you've been together with people over time, but you know, it was always a joke. Maybe this is true. So anyway, from my side, this work began 5 years ago, and I've been doing an awful lot of political work over the years, and have had I guess I switched from painting 10 years ago when the market crashed 10 years ago. I guess it was 10 years ago. And I went from painting to sculpture because I always wanted to do sculpture and I knew it wouldn't sell. And I just accepted the fact that I was going to make things that didn't sell. And it was like I opened a new door. And so here I am making big, huge things that go back to my studio and stay there, which is fine. I've never been a good salesperson anyway. On the other hand, Howard does well. He sells things periodically and probably should make more of an effort to get work out there, but he has a few pieces in museums and in collections all over the country, and so he's very satisfied with the way his career has gone. And now my work is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and heavier. More fiber is really heavy, and so I didn't realize that until I tried to lift these things, and I realized that I couldn't anymore, so I had to get helpers. And for a long time, I had a really good, wonderful studio assistant, and she was helping me to get them done. But she's gone on with her life, and now a lot of this piece. Are you focusing on this piece now? Soft power came from my time with realizing that Trump was really going to become president. Hard to believe, but true. And I couldn't believe that we could possibly have a person who secretly disliked women and who was terrible, was actually really nasty to women. And I felt that women needed to be more powerful. And then I had this association with Trump and The Handmaid's Tale, which terrified me. The Handmaid's Tale is the story about women in the future becoming chattel and breeders of selected people. And when we recently started to hear that our abortion rights might change, it pushed me further into this idea of needing strong women in the world. So this, to me, although it isn't to everyone, I understand, but it is a woman, and it's about strength and the glorification of strength. And I felt that I always wanted the softness in her, but these are really the architectural strength. They represent the architectural strength of women's work and women's abilities to hold together over time, and has also a lot to do with cotton, which is a whole political issue as well, and all of the work that's gone into our country around the cotton industry, which has to do with Black Lives Matter and the other things that we're also going through as a country. So in addition to being the opposite of, although it looks the same color-wise and to the handmaids, they wore white bonnets and red cloaks, and I wanted to be the opposite of a strong head. I've done a lot of women's creatures, personages in my whole career, having to do with mythology and all of the references to female forms with various different heads throughout history. And my focus was on Kali, the goddess, tantric goddess of death and destruction. And the reason why was because I was brought up Catholic. And never, I left the Catholic Church at 18, and it didn't really sink into me, and that women could have that another goddess until I studied art history and I became really aware of that Mary was not the only woman in the world, a symbol, an icon. And so a lot of my work also is very iconic in shape. And I think that Mary image follows me forever. And I just have accepted it now. There's no point in fighting it anymore. So the idea of strong women is the Mary shape. And she continues to appear, not consciously, but she continues to appear in my work.
I love that. I didn't know that because I feel like the way that we've been talking about this show is that like each piece is like, this represents this and this represents this. And I like having a better understanding of like the thorough lines between all of the work and like how like you're continuing to explore these like other themes within your own life or other political movements that are happening simultaneously to the one you're talking about, like specifically.
Right.
Because like you hadn't talked to at least me before about the cotton in this piece, and it also representing BLM, and I only kind of been thinking about the piece in the back representing that. So
Okay.
that's really great.
I never thought about that one necessarily.
No, like the
one in the
one.
back, that's true,
Oh.
because she's a little ferocious. If you think about her as a she, and I hadn't. That piece is not figurative to me, but obviously it is.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So
Yeah, do you want to talk more about how you like find the objects you work with? Because I think like
a lot of them are, the objects are getting to be very big and industrial, because like under this piece is it's a stand for eyeglasses from, I don't know, the 50s. It's made out of wood, and the wood pieces, the wood racks that held glasses are what holds up all of the different pieces of it's wonderful. There's all these little hooks underneath. And actually the process part is these are scarves from Old Navy that I deconstructed. I do a lot of deconstruction. I just love doing it. It's so much fun pulling things apart, right? And I remember back to my freshman year in art school, where we had to do a project and about, I don't know what it was about, but anyway, it was destruction. That was my choice, destroying things and pulling them apart. And I think it had something to do with the changes in my ideas about feminism and things. So, but it wasn't necessarily a person or a personage. It was more just about tearing things apart. And my teacher said, huh? We're learning how to put things together. And I said, well, this is put together and then taken apart. And so that continues to be a theme in my work. And you asked me about where I find the objects. So that's where these red, this had to do a lot with color when I found these scarves, right? And in this piece, where did these objects come from? I've collected all of my life. So, and that's what Linda and I were just talking about, the fact that we need to get rid of everything. So my thought was with this, that I would start to put my collections out there, and of course they're not for sale, so they're all going to come back. I think I will in my next few shows try to take some of the pieces in this and make some smaller, maybe sellable objects to show, because I need to start pushing them out the door. And this contains references to how we are all going to hell in a handbasket. That's the title. And the subtitle is We're All in This Together. And we are. Speaking of Well, hopefully we're hitting this is the high low, you know, the real, and we're gonna start going back up, the high low. But this piece contains objects from all over the world, textiles and objects, and I was trying very hard to be inclusive, but it was almost impossible. But I got pretty far. There's Mexican and Asian and African. I have a collection of African art, so that's why that piece is so prominent right here. And let's see, and Mexican, of course, and Japanese, and these are Chinese slippers from the 1920s or 30s. And the doll that's an actual Ukrainian doll, Ukrainian Russian doll, that I put on top of something very fragile. And hopefully, she's looking askance, like she's not sure. She has these most unusual eyes, if you get close up with the eyes. And the eyes are what did it for me. And I wanted her in there. Let's see, what else? There's a shipload of people on their way from all over the world, hopefully. Got the Mexican woman back here. You can't see her from this angle, but they're all made of different materials as well, which interested me. And we have the Guatemalan textiles and lots of references to the different aspects of our life, like chemistry that's just, you know, going forward like at a fast pace. We'll see where it takes us, hopefully to a good place. And we have some gourds. I feel like I'm on a TV show.
No way you are.
Let's see, and there's a lot of antique small leather books wrapped into things, symbolizing our maybe loss of books in this culture, and also the bans that are going on right now, which is a very scary thing to me. To all of us.
We have about like 8 minutes left, so I just wanted to open it up to like any questions from anyone else, because I feel like I've been talking a lot. Not to put everyone on the spot, but
On the spot. Like I said, is she the only one left? Is there
no, Liv and Nashay are both here.
any questions out
You
there?
purposefully collect the stuff for like this piece, knowing that it was going to be used in the sculpture, or was it kind of just stuff you had?
It's a combination of things, things I had around in my house that I collected over traveling, and then objects that are like the doll sets and things. I know that they're gonna be in art
Yeah,
someday.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily precious to me, but there's a number of pieces like down in here that are my own personal clothing that I've gotten rid of. Instead of giving them away at this point, I'm using them. Want to do Ukraine real fast?
What?
Do you want to do that piece real fast?
Yeah.
So, I should have to get right in front of it. to see it. Makes sense. Okay. this piece came together the fastest. This wasn't a 5-year project. This was 3 weeks. And the start of the Ukraine war was just extremely traumatic to me, as it is to our culture. You know, it's, for some reason, I'm sure there's lots of known reasons, that the war that we're all behind fighting Russia or hating Russia at this point. Not understanding what Putin has in mind anyhow, for all these people that are dying. I wanted to make a memorial of sorts. And it's called Ukraine, We Hear You, or We're Listening. And it has a body composed of listening buds from plugins. And actually it is, this softness was important to the contrast of we're listening. And it was almost secretive to me as I started working on it. I wanted it to be a little secretive so that no one would know we're listening, right? And the metal pieces in the top over the head have to do with hidden transmitters, okay? And so, as well as this part, which is part of the transmission aspect of it. And you know, I never told you that either.
No. Well, what is the ruler or like the tape measure or something
Oh,
that's in there?
That's
Or
decorative. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a decorative, I think it's Eastern European
Okay.
or Western European
I get confused with that.
material. It was more decorative than anything. These are actual jump ropes from the dollar store. And to me, they're like listening or speaking into microphones.
Yeah, I also thought that
all
was
of these
tech.
things. You thought they were what?
I thought that was like tech too. I had no idea those were jump ropes. Yeah.
You thought they were tech, right?
Yeah.
How
Did
about
you know
that?
what they were jump ropes?
No, I thought it was, something like technical too.
I've had these things not together, but,
Yeah.
but for 20 years at least. Yeah. And they came from John Cage's last production here at the Edinburgh Theatre. He did an interactive dance performance, and he wanted to communicate with the audience more directly and give them choices. And so you could switch on and off, which I felt didn't work for me, that's for sure. Anyway, he tried. And I thought it interfered with his work. Regardless, they were throwing away all of these earbuds after each performance. And I said, no, you can't do that. That's, you know, it's not environmentally, even back then, all those years ago, we were becoming aware. And so, yeah, so this fellow at the Edinburgh saved them all for me and gave me this huge box. And it sat in my studio for years. And I kept thinking, oh, what am I going to do? Finally, I really liked the result.
So, and that also brings me to, do you feel like your history of working for the PMA has a really big influence on your like own studio practice? And
Oh,
does it still
absolutely.
inform it?
Yeah, absolutely. It for each exhibition that came along over many, many years, a lot of exhibitions, I had to study for each one and become acquainted with stuff I had not a clue about in my life, you know. And because I taught in prison as well, I would from the museum, I would go to the prisons and give lectures and do studio art as well. And I did that for 15 years and then showed the work at the museum. So anyhow, I had to get deeply involved in studying and understanding. And part of not just the stuff that I learned, it's the pace of learning and then engaging with other people, learning and engaging, that has really, I think, pushed me forward in wanting to get my work out there. Yeah. So I guess that's never going away. So we have Mary and PMA and yeah, a lot of content. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
It's wonderful to do this on the spur.
And you're still making work?
I am.
Yeah.
I have a show at the Boston Street Gallery in October.
Awesome.
Ooh, good luck. All right, yeah, let us, email us that and we'll put it out to our members, because we have
Okay.
like updates for members who also have related art news, and so that our members can come up with that.
I'll definitely do that.
Robert also just had a show in
Yeah, I
Boston
had
Street.
one just
Did you?
last month or 2 months ago.
How did I miss? Oh, I was doing this.
Yeah. Yeah,
He's great to work with.
Jeff and Maria, they're sweet people.
Liz says, thank you for giving us a deeper look into your work, Carol.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate that.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap up the Zoom
Yeah,
call and the YouTube live. Thank you everyone for watching and for joining us.